Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders pre-lock NFL show. I am Stevie TPFL, and I'm joined with my good buddy, Will Priester, Chief Justice 06. Chief, we have two-game NFL Monday Night Football slate. What a treat for us as fantasy players, as bettors, as anybody that likes football. What's happening, my friend?
Nothing much. Doing good, man. Always a pleasure. It's actually a really interesting Monday. I don't think we get too many uh, double dips on a Monday. So we get the Monday slate, and then we get two showdown slates to go along with it. So you kind of got three different legs of how you may want to approach this slate, which is interesting. We won't have that too often.
For sure. To be fully transparent, I'm not playing Showdown for the Tennessee Buffalo game. We'll talk about it. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Philly game, and we'll talk about the two-game slates. Got about 25 minutes before the two-game and the Buffalo Showdown slate locks. We're going to be using YouTube chat. If you have questions, I'll have YouTube chat pulled up. You can post in Discord as well in the live stream chat. I'll be paying attention to both of those. So any questions that you guys have, we'll talk about those. Like I said, we're going to talk about the two-game slate. We'll talk about Showdown for each slate. We'll start with the Tennessee Buffalo game when we talk Showdown. But let's talk about this two-game slate as a whole. And, it's a good slate, right? We have all kinds of different ways to approach this slate. We have three top-end quarterbacks. Allen and Hurts probably a little bit above Cousins when we're looking at just elite talent. But Kirk Cousins is a good DFS quarterback. He's always someone that can light up a scoreboard, Will. What do you like here at quarterback on this two-game slate?
Well, I think for me, it's all about how do we think the game is going to end up? And when I'm looking at, so I'm going to start with Buffalo, Tennessee, and then I'm work my way to Philly, Minnesota. No, I take it back. I'm going to work backwards. I think between Philly and Minnesota, we've got to feel like that's the more competitive game in terms of, let's say, scoring, which is what our DFS lineups is going to be all about. It's all about offense, and so. With Jalen Hurts hanging out here, he's the highest owned quarterback. And it's because he's going to get there in so many different ways. He's going to get there with his legs. He's also going to get there through the air. We saw what he was able to do with A.J. Brown last week. And as a result of that, I think I just want to go ahead and take Josh Allen, who feels like the best of both worlds. I feel like Josh Allen has more passing safety. And I don't feel like he has more rushing safety. I think they're about equal, but I do think he has more touchdown equity overall. So for me, we're getting Josh Allen at a slight discount. I think I'm willing to roll him out because if this team is going to win tonight, it's all going to be on his shoulders through the run game, through the passing game, already down a weapon. Love Jalen Hurts. I think he's a fantastic play. I'm not telling you to not play Jalen Hurts. I'm saying I think I'm going to be more of a weight on Josh Allen because I think he's just, even though he's $900 more, I think he's a little bit more the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I'm ending up on a lot of Hurts. I like the Hurts-Brown combo a lot. And not to say that I don't like Josh Allen. It's just his counter pieces are all kind of juicy in this game, and there's a lot of different ways that you can get different with Allen stacks or just playing those guys as one-offs or secondary stacks. So I lean Hurts. Josh Allen is a phenomenal quarterback. We've been preaching this for years. Me and Grant are captain of the early Josh Allen club. So Kirk Cousins, a good DFS play as well. Not as much running upside. But that Minnesota Philly game has all the makings of being a potential shootout game. I think Tannehill, not someone I'm going to play tonight, but he is someone that's going to be low owned. And if he has a 1-yard touchdown rush and throws a couple touchdowns, he could be a difference maker. It's just not something that I'm doing. Let's talk about running back. We're staking on this two-game slate for now. Then we'll talk Showdown for each game, and then we'll get out of here. If you have questions, we'll answer them as we're going. So post them over there on YouTube. Make sure you guys like, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the RotoGrinders YouTube page. But let's talk running back. Obviously, Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry far above the rest when it comes to talent on this slate. Will, what do you like at running back here for this 2-gamer?
Yeah, man, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry are above. Here's what I will say. I do secretly like Devin Singletary in this game. I think he's got some upside here. I think he can get over 50 to 60. I think he can pick up 50 to 60 yards rushing. It's whether or not the catches come and whether or not he gets in the end zone. We saw last week, I think he only had 8 carries, only had 2 targets. And that's just not going to get it done in a general sense, but in a small slate where you kind of maybe need some value, I think he's a good play. I was actually shocked that Miles Sanders was coming in at such low ownership. He had 13 carries last week. Mind you, he was playing the Detroit Lions, and I get that, but I think he might be slightly safer than Devin Singletary, if you will, and he's coming in at about 30%. So I think Miles Sanders is kind of my top cheap guy, and then if I'm going all the way up, like most, I think we want to go Dalvin Cook because of the in my opinion, the passing game upside that he has. But not only that, he had 20 carries last week against the Green Bay Packers in a game that they were, pretty much controlling all the way through. I think Dalvin Cook is probably the number one guy on the slate tonight for good reason. But we also know that Derrick Henry can light it up. I think a combination of Cook, Henry, and Sanders feels like my top play, with the emphasis on probably locking in Dalvin Cook and then just, running through Henry and Sanders in other lineups.
Yeah, I think I ended up on Cook and Henry on 2 of 3 on both of them. So very, very much with you as far as just getting Cook and Henry in there. I like Singletary, but I think Zach Moss is super interesting for tournaments. This morning, it was a huge difference in like ownership, and then throughout the day, the ownership has definitely shifted a little bit here. But I do think that overall we see Moss come in at a lot lower ownership than Singletary here. Maybe half, probably close to half. So really like Zach Moss. He's very involved in the passing game. I play a lot more on Draftkings than I do on Fanduel for these smaller slates because I'm playing more baseball over there. So I do like Zach Moss as a pivot, but I'm with you on Miles Sanders. Like if you're playing Josh Allen and you are hoping that maybe the Philly game, Hurts doesn't have as big of a game, then Sanders is an excellent pivot off of Hurts to kind of make that Josh Allen outscoring Hurts team work. So I definitely like Miles Sanders. So let's talk wide receivers. I mean, we have 3 really good wide receivers on the slate. Jefferson, Diggs, and Brown. AJ Brown came out week 1 and was like, hey, I'm in Philly and I'm fantastic. 45% target share in that game against the Lions. It just looked like it was going to be a Hurts, Brown, Sanders offense. And I mean, Philadelphia is always one of those teams where they're very spread out. So if we get like a condensed Philly offense, it'd be fantastic. But let me not bury the lead, Will. Justin Jefferson's on this slate, and he might be the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL right now.
I mean, the guy's balling, and he's pretty much been balling since college. 11 targets, 9 receptions, 184 yards. I'm definitely not expecting that today, Stevie. But, I mean, you probably pencil him in for 80 yards at a minimum these days. So I definitely like him a lot. I think I am a little bit higher on A.J. Brown in this game just because of the salary. A.J. Brown had 13 targets last week against Detroit in a game that they were winning handedly, Stevie. Handedly for a while until Detroit mounted a comeback, 10 catches, 155 yards. I think A.J. Brown's my number 1 guy this week. And then what I also want to do, Stevie, is I want to move to some of these secondary receivers here,
Yes.
like Devontae Smith and Adam Thielen, who didn't really get their shine last week, but we know that the opportunities will be there for them throughout the season. I don't want to overlook those guys as well. So if I'm building lineups tonight, for me, I want to build a lot with Thielen and Smith, and then but then add in one of the big dogs, Jefferson or Brown, or Diggs, of course. And Diggs probably feels a little bit safer, like the safest out of the trio, because of the, I don't want to say limited options, but Gabe Davis on the other side being out should essentially maybe help him a little bit. But I still think Brown is my favorite because of the price. And then Thielen and Smith, man, I just think, because of last week, they're just too cheap on this slate, in my opinion. We saw week one, Jalen Waddle didn't really go off, and last week him and Tyreek went off. Well, this past Sunday, him and Tyreek went off. We could see something very similar here with A.J. Brown and Smith, or Jefferson and Thielen.
We're going to talk showdown slate here in a minute with the Tennessee Buffalo game, but let's talk about this wide receiver core for Buffalo really quick. Diggs obviously going to be the main guy. We're going to see a lot of McKenzie and Crowder tonight with Gabe Davis out, and both of these guys are really cheap. I think a lot of the ownership is going to go to McKenzie. Would you agree? You think a lot of the ownership is going to go to McKenzie?
Yeah, because he feels like the guy that we all know. But yeah. I think I'm higher on Crowder than McKenzie. I mean, we saw what Cole Beasley was able to do in this offense. I got to think Crowder easily steps in and is able to pick up yards and targets here.
All he has to do is stay healthy. That's been his biggest thing when he was in Washington and, just in general. So if he can stay healthy, he sets up as someone that could, have big games. And obviously we have a ton of interest in him. And in Showdown, we'll get into maybe talking about like Kumaro, because he probably plays a little bit. Dawson Knox touchdown equity goes up a little bit with Gabe Davis out. So, I mean, that's something that's interesting. But let's talk tight ends. I just mentioned Dawson Knox. I think we're going to see a lot of ownership on Goddard and Knox. Austin Hooper is probably third, but Austin Hooper is probably my favorite tight end on this slate. The guy that's going to be forgotten here is Irv Smith Jr. Everyone's going to look, Will, at his week one stats, and they were very careful with him. They played him very carefully. He's been practicing. I think we see a lot more Irv Smith Jr. on the field tonight. And of the four, starting main tight ends, he's definitely going to be the lowest owned. What are your thoughts here at tight end?
Yeah, man, I think Dawson Knox is going to continue to pick up steam as we get closer to lock, just because of the perceived, shortage with Gabriel Davis being out. So I definitely think he picks up some steam here. As we go, so I'm with you on Irv Smith. 3.2K, too cheap. You've got Austin Hooper at 3K. I mean, God, this feels like cheap catcher alert, right, Stevie? Cheap tight ends and cheap catchers. If you get it right, if you get it right, you win the game. So I think if I had to choose one tight end to roll with tonight, I think it's Irv. If I had to roll with one for the price based on the game environment. I'm with Austin Hooper as well, because if they're behind and essentially you feel like he should pick up more targets. But I think Irv is just going to be in a tremendous passing environment. Even though I know they're on the road in Philly, I still think that the targets will be there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think targets are going to be there. And tight ends for me, I think that's where you're going to gain some ownership edge on this slate, because I do think Knox and Goddard are going to be so popular. And I have no issues playing either one of them in the correct type of build. But Smith and Hooper are very interesting for me on this slate. I'm going to be looking at these guys like Irv Smith Jr. It projects just as well as Knox and Goddard, and is a third of the ownership. So, and he's cheaper. So, I mean, I definitely like Irv Smith. 2-game slate, Will. Defense. I mean, if there's no defensive touchdowns, I really don't see like defense being a huge difference maker. So for me, I've just kind of been plugging in whatever defense fits. What are your thoughts here on defense?
Well, the Titans have the lowest owned defense, at least on the 2-game spot. A step up from that is the Vikings. And I feel like if any defense is going to really upset the apple cart outside of the obvious ones, I feel like it's the Vikings. We saw Jalen Hurts just really have a big game against the Detroit Lions last week. But, he's still a young quarterback. He could still make some mistakes tonight. I think my favorite defense is the Vikings. And that's just more of a gut feel, to be honest with you. The obvious play is the Bills defense, but will they actually be able to stop Derrick Henry today? I was talking to the commish before this show and Luch, and we were just kind of talking about the Titans being plus 10, some spots. And, to me, how do they get away from that? If Derrick Henry goes for over 100 yards, then they're probably in this game, because that means they're probably controlling the ball a little bit more, which means I don't think the Bills' defense is going to be as valuable if it comes down to that. So for me, I think the Vikings is my favorite one, but that's just me saying, hey, they're kind of one of the lower on defenses on a really small slate.
And I mean, at the end of the day, everyone watched the game last week, and everyone saw Buffalo shut down the Rams offense. So, I mean, I think Derrick Henry has a lot of upside here on the 2-game slate and on the showdown. So, we did have one question on YouTube chat. Like, again, if you guys are watching, make sure you head on over to YouTube. And is Justin Jefferson a lock for the 2-game slate? Would you lock him in, and depending on if you're playing 1, 3, 20, 100 teams?
No, I wouldn't lock him in any scenario just because of the price, which is why I'm so high on AJ Brown. Like, if they have similar ceilings today, it just AJ provides me a little bit more salary to kind of get maybe one extra guy in, and maybe now I can get to Derrick Henry versus playing Miles Sanders. You get what I'm saying here? And so now, if let's say I fade Jefferson and play AJ, and AJ has an upside game, and Derrick Henry has an upside game, and I get to fade Sanders or Singletary, I've immensely increased my upside. So that's kind of my read on it. But so I don't think he's a lot, but I definitely think you don't need to be fading Jefferson in a general sense.
All right, let's talk showdown. Again, if you guys have any questions, we'll talk about it and we'll answer them. But let's talk showdown. This game's getting close to lock here. We have about 7 minutes, a little under 7 minutes before this one locks. We got Tennessee at Buffalo. Let's talk just roster construction in general. I'm personally, so I said I wasn't going to play showdown for this slate, and I totally just built a team for showdown on this slate. So I lean 4-2 Buffalo on my build here, but there's no way that I'm not playing Derrick Henry in a showdown build here. What are your thoughts as just lineup construction here when we got about 6 minutes?
Yeah, let me start with captain. Initially, I felt like my captain I was going to side with Stephon Diggs. Those were kind of my thoughts. I don't feel like the price differential is enough between him and Allen. I know it's like $1,200. I just feel like I just take Allen and lock him in the captain, and I'll figure it out from there. Like I think he's got so much upside. He's got more upside than anybody in this game. Lock button, and when I say lock button, I do mean 100% Josh Allen captain, and then I just figure it out from there. If I had to lock in a flex play, it's probably Jamison Crowder. I don't think it's McKenzie for me anyway. I think Crowder has. I think he's going to get a lot of balls thrown his way tonight. And when I say lock button on him, I'm saying a lot more than the field. So the field's at 20%. I'd probably be about 50% Crowder tonight in the flex for sure. I just think he's really going to see the targets. We've got Robert Woods, who's over there, who didn't have a great game at all last week. Only saw 2 targets. I gotta think it's going to pick up. They're going to have to pass the ball this week, so I don't hate him as well. We've got him about 30%. I wouldn't mind going overweight on him as well. And then, the lock button for me in terms of the flex, I think I just handcuff Allen and Diggs and everything. Maybe that's wrong, but I think that's how I approach it, Stevie. Lock button Josh Allen captain, lock button Stephon Diggs in the flex, and then I go from there. And however it works out from there, whoever else I have to fit in, that's who I have to fit in. But I don't think I built any lineups without those 2 guys.
So I think I'm leaning going because I want to get Henry in there, and I'm with you on Robert Woods. There's been a ton of talk about Phillips, and I need to see more than one good game out of Kyle Phillips for me to really get super excited about playing him. I mean, they have Westbrook, they have his name. Who's their rookie wide receiver that I can't think of right now?
Oh, Treylon Burks.
Yeah, Burks. So I just don't feel like Phillips is a lock by any means. So I'm leaning right now Allen captain. I'm with you on that. I think he has the highest ceiling outside of Diggs and Henry. And in the showdown slate, I really like Crowder. I feel like we're going to see so many people get McKenzie in there that I feel like Crowder could be a difference maker. You could potentially play both of them together. I think Knox would be popular. We have 3 minutes before this one locks, and then we'll talk about the other game real quick from showdown perspective. But let's talk cheap plays here. Tyler Bass, your boy, Will is team kicker to the max. Are we looking at Tyler Bass? Are we looking at Bullock? Hooper is cheap on DraftKings. Zach Moss is cheap on DraftKings. I'm leaning Hooper Moss, but I definitely don't mind getting some Tyler Bass or any of these guys in there. What are your cheap plays you're looking at here? We've got about 3 minutes.
Yeah, for sure, man. Bass is definitely one. He's 4K tonight, so definitely want to get him in. You talked about Hooper. I think Hooper is absolutely viable at 3,800, and let's just hope Geoff Swain doesn't come and swipe a touchdown from it.
I think it's just worth the risk. You can take a shot on Swain, but I feel like Hooper is going to be that tight end for this team. So that's the cheap guys we're looking at. Don't think you could play the Buffalo defense in showdown if you wanted to. I'm probably not going there, but they're going to be so popular on the 2-game slate that they might get a little bit too much ownership on the showdown slate because people don't like shifting gears. So this one's going to lock in a minute. I feel like we covered that one really good. Will, give the people, what is your prize pick play? What is your prize pick play for this one?
Yeah, out of this game, man, I am taking Treylon Burks over 28.5 receiving yards. I like that one a lot. Another one I like, I'm heavy on Josh Allen over 40.5 rushing yards, just because I think, I think he's going to still be able to get it going on the ground. I love kickers. I'm taking Tyler Bass over 1.5. No seat there. And then I sort of like Devin Singletary over 22.5 rushing yards first half. I think he can kind of get going on the ground. I like Jamison Crowder over 18.5 first half receiving yards. Him getting some of those slot plays. I think he can get that in 2 catches, depending on how the route lines up for him to get some yards after the catch. So my top plays there: Treylon Burks over 28.5 receiving yards, Josh Allen over 40.5 receiving yards. I do have Singletary over 44.5 for the game, but I also like 22.5 first half. Clearly like Tyler Bass over 1.5 field goals, and I took Josh Allen over 20.5 rushing yards first half as well.
I know Will and myself are both over there posting on Scores and Odds all the time. If you miss the news somehow, we have this new sports better tool, Parlay IQ. It's fantastic. I hit a single game parlay on Scores and Odds. I was 6.7 units to the good this weekend in football, Will. Good weekend for me over there on Scores and Odds if you guys were tailing. So Let's talk showdown really quick for the other game, because I know a lot of people are going to bounce off here and go watch that football game. Who are you leaning captain for the late game here?
So this one gets a little bit more difficult, right? Because now I don't feel like there's one guy, in my opinion, that can absolutely just blow through the slate, and you've got to have him. And I say that because there are probably four guys in this game that you're choosing from. And so if the receivers have, the upside games that they had last week, then, well, now you're absolutely looking at them. You've got A.J. Brown is at 10-4 in terms of his regular salary, but Kirk Cousins is 9,800. I think Kirk Cousins feels like the right captain in this game, considering the big price difference we're getting. And, this offense should be throwing the ball a lot more. So if you're getting Kirk Cousins in terms of captain pricing, he's 1, 2, 3, 4. He's the fifth highest captain price, and he's projected higher than A.J. Brown. So I think Kirk Cousins feels like the best captain spin, and then you kind of go from there.
Yeah, I like that call. I'm leaning A.J. Brown as my captain. I love his potential ceiling. He's my favorite prize picks play over there. Brown over 73.5 receiving yards. I like that a lot. I think this game's going to be a shootout, and I don't think either defense is great. So, I think we're going to see a lot of scoring. So I'm leaning right now having Brown as my captain. This is such an interesting game because Hurts adds so much rushing upside and ceiling that it's tough to not have Hurts in your captain in like cash game type of builds. The other thing that's really interesting here, Will, is Jefferson's there too, and he's so expensive. But man, this guy is just a monster. He's someone that can put up 30, 40 fantasy points on a weekly basis. If you want to get contrarian in showdown on this late slate, just take Irv Smith and Thielen or Cook instead of Jefferson and leave Jefferson out and just hope he doesn't score a touchdown. Because if he goes for 7 and 100, he might not be optimal at this price point. So I think that's somewhere you could potentially be different here on the showdown slates. Let's talk cheap plays. I think we had a lot in that first game because of some injuries. Not so much here. Irv Smith is 4.4K. Alexander Madison, he only played, I think, like 20%. I think this cheap game, we might be relying on your boys, Greg Joseph and Jake Elliott. What are your thoughts here on the cheap guys?
Yeah, man, cheap guys don't feel great here. And I'm always going to be in favor of one kicker at least. In this particular game, I feel like I'm going to take Joseph on the road, going from a dome to the field, and maybe they just don't get going the same way in the first half. And Joseph is able to squeak through 2 field goals to kind of start the game. And then now, he picks up the extra points in the rest of the half and maybe another field goal. And don't forget, folks, 3 points for anything, under 40, 4 points for anything under 50. You got guys that are hitting 50 yards, they're getting 50 plus yards, they're getting 5 points. I typically try to think that they're going to get, maybe a 40 yard or 30 yard and a few extra points, or 2 40s or something like that. So I do lean Joseph in this game a bit more than Elliott, even though the projections don't agree. That's just more of a game script play than a projection play.
Yeah, I don't mind either kicker. Irv Smith's probably my favorite cheap play here. You could take some tournament shots on KJ Osborne as well. He's 4,600 on DraftKings. Devontae Smith is really interesting as a pivot, or even playing him together with A.J. Brown. I have no issues playing multiple pass catchers here from the same team in this game, because both Thielen and Jefferson could have big games. We could see Brown and Smith have big games. So don't see any more questions. We got the pre-lock up and done because the game has started. We have a kickoff, and we appreciate everyone hanging out with us here at Monday Night Football. Again, if you're not, make sure you subscribe to the RotoGrinders YouTube page. Alan Diggs, first play of the game. Like, are you shocked? Like, you're not.
Nope.
So that's going to wrap it up here. Will be on Food for Thought later this week. The Morning Grind each and every day, Monday through Friday. Football podcast comes out on Thursday. So appreciate everyone hanging out, watching. That's going to wrap us up, and we'll see you again Thursday Night Football.